Welcome to Paris. I'm here today at Twin Studios and I want to talk to you about a new compressor from a company called Alternate Soundings. This is their new compressor called the Dynax2. It's a classic compressor in every respect, that it does what we expect compressors to do, but it also does a number of really radical things which are very musical and very interesting for people making music. I just want to take you quickly through the front panel of the machine and tell you what all these beautiful buttons do. Okay, here we've got a very usual function. It's called standby. This is obviously something which, rather like an amplifier, we switch the thing on or off. The only difference with this one is that it actually cuts out all the circuitry and your signal is really dry. It's just going straight in, straight out. It's not going through the compression at all. Underneath here you have a switch which affects this VU meter, the blue meter you can see here. In this position it's looking at the gain, the output of the machine on the left hand side. Over here, logically, on the right, it's the output on the right-hand side of the machine. And in the middle, here we're looking at the gain reduction. That means the amount of compression that we have globally on the signal going through the machine. So, very useful function, very necessary for engineers, so you can set up compressors without people necessarily hearing them first. And very useful in live functions where you need to see what you're actually doing. Okay, let me take you on to the next part after the VU meter. This is where we're looking at the sidechain functions within the compressor. You'll see this thing called bass drive. This basically affects how much the bass signal compresses the music that's going through the actual machine. You've got 300, 200 and 100 cycles. These are roll-off points in the bass signal and they will affect how the bass is actually making the signal compressed or not. This sidechain is always en route, always functioning within the machine itself, but you also have an external switch here. If I put it on external, it's the signal which is coming into the back of the machine. That means an external source. It could be a vocal or any other sound that we choose, which will affect the compression of the machine. So for example, it could be a vocal coming in through an external lead, which then will compress the music which is going through the compressor in itself. The other function here in the middle is classic left-right. That means the machine's working in a stereo mode where your image is preserved no matter how much compression you put or don't put on the signal. It's controlled equally left and right. And on the final switch here on the left-hand side, marked just simply L, that means it's the signal coming into the left-hand side of the compressor, which will more or less compress the signal. Moving along here a bit further to the right, here we've got two similar knobs. One's attack and one's release. Attack controls the rapidity, that means like the speed of which the signal itself will be compressed. If you have very fast transient signals like a drum for example, you can compress that by putting very fast attacks onto things. If you have a slower signal, by slow I mean ballistically or sonically a slower signal like a bass guitar for example, you'd probably have less of an attack. If you put faster attack, you'd actually induce a distortion in the signal, which is sometimes very pleasant. It's a choice and it's a musical one to make. Here you have a release control that more or less shows us how quickly the signal returns to its original level. You'll see that the meter here is more reactive. When I've got it on the faster position, it's bouncing around a lot more. When I put it on slower release, it has a more consistent compression level like this. That's the usual standard compression function, but it's very clearly illustrated on this VU meter. Here we have three different functions within the compressor itself. A limiter, which is something which will just limit our signal at a certain level and not let anything else go above it. You have a brick wall, which is a rather more severe example of the same thing, where the signal is definitively cut off. Well, the word speaks for itself. It's a brick wall, nothing passes that. And then you have a new function which is called anti-dyna, and that's something which actually re-expounds, you could say, the signal after the initial compression point. That means that the signal will pump even more. It's a very extreme effect, but it's something that we use more and more in record production these days, and it's quite unique to this machine. Here you have the threshold control. This basically controls the amount of compression. Here you see the little needle bouncing around. If I put it over here, there's no compression happening at all. As I increase the threshold level, more and more compression is happening to the signal. The final two controls, once again, these very nice big black knobs, old-fashioned style, but they're nice to get your hands onto. Left and right output controls for the machine, which means you can more or less balance your stereo image as you need to hear it. Okay, let's have a look at how this thing really sounds, because let's face it, that's what's important. I'm going to set up a few different presets for you so you can hear basically what the machine's doing. This is a basic compression setting for standard drum compression. So this is the signal without the compressor, and here, that's with it. You can hear the difference. Okay, here's another setting for drums. We've got a snare drum going through this machine. This is a rather more radical setting which has a fast attack and a fast release. And listen to what this does. You can hear that. I hope you can. Okay, here's another setting, still listening to the same snare drum. This has got a rather slower attack and a rather slower release. It's still doing a lot of things to the sound. Have a listen to what happens. Here we go. Here it's really squeezing that snare drum up. Still in the limiter mode here. Okay, now we've got a whole drum kit going through the machine, and I just want to show you a general compression setting for the entire drum kit. Here we go. Still in a limiter mode here. Got a medium attack rate and a rather faster release. So it's not pumping too much, but the signal's being really compressed. This without, and this with. There you go. Okay, now we're going to do a few more radical things with the machine. This is the fun part. Now we're in the anti-dyna mode, which I spoke about earlier, which is the most radical function within the machine. And this can completely transform things. Let me show you. That was a drum kit, it's now become a drum kit and something else. Here's without. And here's with. And this is the fast attack and fast release function in the anti-dyna mode. A lot of fun. Alright, that was a very quick tour around the alternate soundings Dynax2 compressor. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you can enjoy using it as well.